Welcome back to Broken Electronics. I'm Lee, and it's great you could stop by here today for this little project. We're here, of course, again in Studio B, and we're still with the 2009 Mac Pro 4,1, now flashed to a 5,1 as per the last video. Today, our plan is going to be to upgrade the operating system. You may remember I attempted to put an RX 580 in, only to discover that the system that was on, which shouldn't even have been on this machine, Sierra 10.12.4, didn't have drivers for it. I'd still love to know how that installation ever took place, but oh well, I guess we'll never know that one. In any event, what we're going to do today will end up being installing High Sierra. And I think probably the best thing for us to do at this point is to dive into screen capture and take a little bit more of a look at that process. Please stay tuned. Well, here we are on the desktop. Sierra 10.12.4. I considered going ahead and doing the update to 10.12.6 since it was offered once we flashed the firmware in the last video. However, kind of pointless because we know we're going to be going beyond that. And taking notes, since we have firmware flashes yet to do, this version of the firmware, MP51.007F.B03, and that will change. Okay, now I was talking quite a bit about Jay from House of Moth and his excellently written directions, which we have here. In terms of other firmware upgrades, he gives links to download the High Sierra installer and the Mojave installer. Awfully handy. Great work with this, I've got to say. And I'd been talking towards the end of the last video, kind of off the top of my head, about maybe just going directly to Mojave. And then I realized that probably wasn't going to work. And let me show you what happens when you start that installer. In order to install macOS Mojave, you must first install macOS High Sierra 10.13.6 or greater. Alright, so the installer is looking at the firmware. And if you don't have the High Sierra firmware, it won't even run. So instead, we shall start the High Sierra firmware. And now we see the directions about the firmware update. To install macOS High Sierra, a firmware update is required. To complete the update, click Shut Down and wait for your Mac Pro to power off. Next, hold the power button until a power indicator light flashes or you hear a long tone. Okay, this of course is exactly what we saw when we were doing the 5.1 update. Alright, so I am going to be doing this. We'll need to end the screen recording at this point, at which point I will click Shut Down. The machine will shut down, and we will then go through the process of the firmware update. Stay tuned. Alright, the machine is off now. I thought you might be interested in seeing firsthand. When we did the last firmware flash, I didn't show this. I stayed focused on the screen. But the machine is off. We press in the power button, and now you hold it. Oh, that's odd. Okay, there's the flash. We should hear the tone presently, and there's the tone. I don't know why it shut itself down. Okay then. Huh, and that time it was the top. Oh, both of them opened up. There really are 2 optical drives in this thing. I don't know, maybe I didn't have the power button pressed in firmly enough the first time. Pardon me while I adjust a little bit. Okay, there we refocused. Okay, so the firmware should now be flashed. I think at this point we can simply wait for the machine to reboot, which it will. And the next thing we'll see should be the Sierra desktop preparing to install High Sierra. Stay tuned. And here we are. We can look at about this Mac and look at System Profiler. Quit that. Okay. And our boot ROM version? Yep. MP51.0089.BOO. Okay. Pretty crazy. Close out of that. Continue. Agreed. Sign my life away here. And the installation has started. I went from 15 minutes to 4 minutes in less than a second. That's, of course, prior to when it will restart. I don't anticipate there being, now it's 5 minutes. I don't anticipate any difficulties. Of course, it's going to restart itself, boot into the installer, and we will end up in High Sierra. So, if any interesting things pop up in the midst of this, we're heading in the wrong direction. It's 6 minutes now. We'll bring you back. I'll wait through this so that you don't have to. But I will only do that if you promise to stay tuned. So it has indeed restarted and rolling along. We're about halfway through this here. There shouldn't be any great adventures to this. It's kind of nice after having struggled through so many of the recent OS installations on Mac Pros to just feel that, okay, start it going, you can walk away from it and let it be done. Anyhow, it's interesting. I was thinking, when you're doing firmware flash, the optical drive will eject itself, and evidently, at least according to Jay's article, that's an indication, this machine telling you that it's the right firmware. It can accept it. But to see both those optical drives coming out, and you got to think, what possible use is there for two optical drives? So we're restarting again. Well, remember, at this time, when this machine was first released, the operating system was 10.5 Leopard. That was the current operating system in early 2009. By late 2009, that was supplanted by Snow Leopard. Operating systems still came on DVDs at that point. It was the only way you could get them. So you had to have a DVD drive. Also, these machines being intended for 41 minutes remaining, being intended for professional use, the copying of DVDs could be very, very important if you've using it for video production to make the DVDs right there in your machine and be able to do multiple ones. There are many uses for it. Now today, I have used the DVD drives in my Mac Pros, but over the course of, what is it now? 19, 20. About 4 years of computing primarily with classic Mac Pros. I doubt that I've used it more than half a dozen times. Well, in any event, we'll get back to you presently. Stay tuned. Okay, we've restarted again. We're just about here. I think we're about to boot to the desktop. It's been, I don't know, 25 minutes, maybe half an hour. I haven't really been timing it. Progress meter said 43 minutes when it finally came up with a time, but it didn't take that. As it stalls. Oh, you'd think that I would have installed Mac OS enough by now to know that it's gonna slow down, it's gonna take its time, and it'll be okay in the end. Okay, there we go. And it should bring us desktop, and it has. All right. And this, of course, is the High Sierra wallpaper, obviously. And we're going to need to do some setting up. So I think what I'll do is go through the setup as it is here. And then we'll come back with a screen capture and then see what else we do. Please stay tuned. Booted up, signed into iCloud. Everything is as it is supposed to be. Look at about this Mac. And yes, we have 10.13.6. Here's the system report. Enjoying our firmware. All right, now there's a couple of things that I want to do. One, I've got to admit, this little GeForce GT 630 actually works pretty darn well. But, let's get that RX 580 going again, because now we have the drivers for it. And in the memory, I'm going to make what may seem to you to be a sideways move, taking out all of the 8 gigabyte modules and replacing them with 2 16s that just came in today. So we'll have the same 96 gigs of RAM. However, as I was pointing out in an earlier video here, these Mac Pros do address memory in triple channel. So actually leaving one slot empty on both sets for each processor is much more efficient and faster than so using two 16s instead of 4 8s is going to be an upgrade. Okay, so what we need to do now is shut the machine down, perform those upgrades, and then we shall take a look at that. Stay tuned. Again, there isn't really a good way to record this. I have removed the 1 terabyte hard drive. I also took the time to remove the retaining bar. And now, getting this out without taking the fan off. There we go. This has been a handy purchase. It was, what, about 85 bucks. I got it from Mac VidCards. Mac flashed it for me. And it's a very serviceable card. As I said, it is metal supported, so you can just keep using it. And very handy. If you need to get that boot screen back, there's a good way to do it. Just doesn't want to go in, does it? Oh, I see what the problem is. I had put in another slot cover. So when I was trying to put the video card in, it takes up 2 slots, so this top DVI port had no place to go. And that now pops right in. Plug the 8-pin from the dual mini 6 to 8-pin converter cable. Lock it into place. One of the things I found with RX-580 is you kind of have to get them okay, there we go. It's hard to reach the thumb screw, so fortunately Apple provided a Phillips slot there. All right. Now, 1 second while I locate where I put the RAM. Stay tuned. All right, brand new ATEC RAM, just broke the seal. All right. These go back into the box of RAM. One of the reasons I can't stay away from these machines, they are just so easy to work on. So our seemingly sideways RAM move. Is now complete. Leaving that one empty slot to which I referred. Okay. Okay, we shall now boot it up and view the results. Please stay tuned. Okay, we're in the home stretch then. The big thing to look at about this Mac. See, it does say here Mac Pro early 2009 still. 96 gigabytes of memory, which is expected. Now, this 1066 may or may not go up to 1333 once I upgrade the processors. Looking in storage, we see the difference, of course. We've got 3 16s for each processor with an empty slot, triple channel. Alright. And then look at the system report. And here we see that once we did the firmware flash, I hadn't pointed this out, the model identifier has changed now to Mac Pro 5,1. In effect, this machine is a 5,1 Mac Pro, just made in 2009 instead of 2010 to 2012. All good. Okay, we can close out of that. Now, I suppose the only thing we really need to talk about at this point would be, where do we go from here? Well, there's a lot to go from here. I've got upgrades yet to do. Probably the next one we'll get to will be some storage upgrades, in terms of hardware upgrades in any event. I am going to upgrade the processors. I am going to make an effort. I mean, I've done it before. I've never failed to do it, but it's a pain in the neck. But yeah, I'm going to upgrade the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth on this machine. But next up has got to be installing Mojave. Because when we install Mojave, there's another firmware flash. That will enable us to boot from an NVMe PCIe drive. And I have one. That's part of my storage upgrades. But first we need to get Mojave in there, and then we'll be dealing with that. So the next video then will be firmware flash and upgrade to Mojave on this machine. And we'll see if I throw anything else into it at that point as well. Be good to other people. They need it and deserve it. Be good to yourselves. If we're to make this world a better place, we need to be good to ourselves. Sadly, the world is not a better place at this point. But we're going to keep trying. Until it is, take very, very good and careful care in these difficult times. Yes, we'll be back with at least 3, maybe 4 more videos. The upgrade to Mojave is going to stay there for a while. I want to get the hardware fully upgraded before I even think about any version higher than Mojave. So, like I say, that's the next video. Unless something else comes up in between, because there's always other things that happen. And if you want to find out what they are, you're just going to have to stay tuned here. Until it's available, this has been Broken Electronics.